Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the It's All Possible episode. I'm very excited today to have Matt Williams with us. Matt is the Managing Director for EMEA for Telstra. How are you, Matt?
I'm good, thank you, Rob. Nice to see you again.
Excellent, great to see you. Now, where are you calling in from? You in London?
No, I'm actually just south of London on the coast in Brighton and Hove, which is often called London by the Sea, actually. But only about an hour's train ride into the city.
Gee, it's almost the same as Melbourne. We've got a Brighton down here too, and it's about an hour's train ride into the city. I don't know what's going on there. We keep copying. I'm really excited about talking today because I want to talk to you about the agilities in the new digital normal, which is a great Telstra report. And I think that a lot of these research reports happen, year on year, but when one's been done during 2020 into 2021, it just has that extra significance. And no doubt you've probably had that amount of exposure and people having a good read of this to see what situation they're in. Tell me though, what drove the need for the report? What drove you guys to actually produce the report?
Yeah, well, I think given at Telstra we use communications technology to help our customers to transform, and technology has such an impact on your competitive advantage, and in the digital age, agility is so important in terms of the way that we respond to change and drive value for our businesses. And so we're always interested in how we help our customers to achieve that agility and achieve their outcomes. And so technology, we feel, is essential in terms of operating efficiency and value creation for the future. And we also know that digital transformation means something different to every organization. So it could be driving a great user experience. It could mean building digital interactions with your customers or building new tech to collect and monetize data. And pre-pandemic, we saw a mixture of reasons why perhaps the digital transformation landscape was progressing quite slowly. We found from our customers that returns were somewhat unquantified. We found that transitioning from legacy to future state was difficult. It was complex and more costly than imagined as well. But then there was nothing like a global pandemic to spark some action. So we were really curious to understand how organizations across Europe were adapting to delivering their digital transformation strategies, which might have taken years in a matter of months to survive in a world where we have to operate remotely. And so we wanted to collect those findings and share them with our customers.
I think you're absolutely right too. And I think what we saw globally, and we'll talk about EMEA specifically, but globally we saw 3 or 4 years of forecast trends collapse into about 6 months. Now, one of the research pieces I thought was interesting was says, according to the research, it was 58% of European IT directors have allocated more budget to digital transformation. I thought that was low. I was like, I would have thought it'd be a lot higher. Were you surprised by the 58%? I mean, but then again, you said it was slow beforehand. So is that up? What are your feelings on that?
Well, there was already significant investment beforehand. So 58% say they had ploughed more into transformation. And I'm not really sure how this compares with the rest of the world. But what I can say is that in the survey, it proved that those who were furthest through the execution of their strategy had also ploughed more investment post-pandemic, about a third more than average. So I think that's quite compelling. And for me, I think therefore it is low. I think
correct. I think I like that stat too. That's a really interesting one. So the ones who are so more agile and further down the pathway kind of bought him or on their way. When this hit, they were like, wow, thank God we didn't start 6 months later. And they put more in because they could start to see. And I think this actually really helped for a lot of IT people, because I don't know about you, but one of the things I've seen still an issue is that IT in many cases still sits 2 or 3 layers away from the C to the board level. And there's still that language barrier in a way it just hasn't quite connected to what it's doing. And it's where you said like the ROI is not quite there yet. But those who had made the investment, had actually signed off at a board level, were getting down the path, were in much better positions. That's a really good bit of research. That's a great stat.
Definitely, yeah. And so the cohort was typically senior IT business leaders, and one of the key stats was that they made better progress when the management team was bought in, but also when the workforce was bought in as well, and they were willing to change.
Yeah, yeah. And there's nothing like a pandemic to kind of get everyone on the same page.
Absolutely. absolutely. It definitely put everyone into a little bit of trouble, and everyone had to respond.
And tell me, what about the, were there any countries through EMEA that stood out as higher performers than others?
Yeah. So we saw actually that organizations in Germany were the most confident when it came to their progress with strategy execution. I think around 88% reported that they were most or all of the way along their journey, which was notably higher than other European countries. But I thought the other interesting observation was that they also had the highest number of paused or cancelled projects. So that indicated that Germany had prioritized much harder than other countries. And so they had a greater degree of projects accelerating towards completion and fewer projects live.
Right.
So
So they
I
really
thought
got
that
into.
was a really interesting stat. And the reason why I thought that, because what we see, and we see this actually from other analyst data as well, is that when it comes to what to focus on, lots of businesses are just grappling with what it takes to continue to work and operate efficiently, and what it takes to create value. And it just seems that they're considering all of this at once, and that's difficult, I think, and it shows that there are just so many things to consider for most enterprises across the world right now. And for me, it feels like the best thing to do is to say, okay, well, let's take a step back. Let's think about the outcomes we want. Let's think about what exists today, where we want to be tomorrow, and develop a really focused plan to get there. And I think that's really demonstrated in from the cohort in Germany.
Given that, and I really think that's a great observation, Matt, were there any organizations or particular leadership styles you saw come to the front during this pandemic? So irrespective of sort of company or industry, were there any sort of leadership styles that they're more pragmatic, or they were less about procrastination, or there was a leader who was able to rally the team? Did you see any evidence of that was outperforming others who are maybe just working out, still kind of working out which way to go?
That's a difficult one. I think that's quite subjective. I can talk about how the pandemic has challenged me as a leader. We didn't really consider that in the data. What we did see is that it was very consistent that all respondents felt that digital transformation was critical in becoming an agile modern business. So yeah, I don't know how that's influenced or changed their leadership styles, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I know Cognizant did a little bit of work around this, the leadership styles to going forward, and there was a lot more. What they found was a lot more empathetic, caring, but creating an inspirational environment. So saying, okay, so this is where we're up to, this is where we're going, this is what we believe is the way forward. So they were sort of getting amongst it, saying, hey, we're looking at this, we're not sure, we don't have all the answers, so they're a bit vulnerable. But they did lead their way out. So they said, we're not really sure, we're a bit like you, we're all in the same boat. However, given this and this and this, we're now going to go that. And so that was one thing they kind of picked up on. And look, I probably will be interesting on the research, because it's probably going to be those ones who said, well, if I take the German example, let's deprioritize A, B, and C and focus on 1, 2, 3. That'd be interesting. Hey, can I just ask you a question? There was one on, you said that 90% of the respondents believe that digital transformation was critical to becoming agile. Yeah. But you could become agile before digital transformation. And I just wondered whether it was chicken before the egg, in terms of could you be agile? And if you're agile, therefore digital transformation would happen faster.
Yeah, I think the latter is definitely the case, because you can still complete projects, but slowly. And I think the degree of your agility helps you to increase the pace of change. So it is definitely a chicken and egg situation, because your tech enables agility alongside other things such as agile working practices, which we have at Telstra. But there's some really good examples around tech and how that can drive agility. So cloud is the first one that springs to mind, because having everything built for and stored in and managed from the cloud gives everyone ultimate flexibility to perform their duties wherever they are, to access the data and the applications need wherever they are, on whatever device. All they need is connectivity. But only 23% of the respondents reported that they had a cloud-first strategy, and 30% were migrating toward the strategy. So the vast majority saw cloud as that enabler, but still have a long way to go. And the ability for employees to fundamentally do their work wherever they are is the new normal. And so flexible working was also seen as the top enabler for business agility. And so I mentioned before, focus on operating efficiency and value creation. And for me, I think you've got to get your operating efficiency right first and enable your people to create value.
Yes.
And that seems to be the right sequence.
Yeah, I really like them. If there's one thing that the pandemic, you know, I think as Winston Churchill said, you know, never waste a crisis. But if there was one thing around the pandemic that I've always believed in was around, you know, the flexibility in work environments. And, you know, the 23% on the cloud only had a cloud first. Well, you know, I hope that gets up, because that's the way to have the flexibility in a secure environment. Is to drive that. You know, one of the things of driving agility was the flexibility, and that definitely came through on the research. And a number of leaders I've spoken to have done the flexibility thing, but they've really watched their numbers. They've watched productivity, they've watched revenue, they've watched pipeline, they've watched bottom line, they've watched NPS, they've watched internal sat. And they said, you know, you can't argue with the numbers. The numbers, you know, generally have all gone up. And we've remained as we've become more flexible. And it's I don't know about the UK and London, Matt, but certainly in Australia now, people are really unsure of how to go back to the office, when we should go back to the office, who should go back to the office, how often we should go back to the office, because there is this dilemma that the actual overall numbers are up in terms of productivity, in terms of, you know, the agility, the flexibility, and honestly, the happiness of employees. Are you seeing something similar?
Yeah, I think that's hopefully one of the really positive things to come out of all of this. And, you know, let's say that we put the pandemic behind us and people are safe and they're comfortable to make choices and to travel if they need to. I genuinely think that that won't happen in the same way as we've seen before ever again. And actually at Telstra, we have a policy which is called All Roles Flex. And the origins of that were very much about employee engagement, diversity and inclusion, and really about creating an environment to balance work and life, especially around the family, and especially around encouraging females to come back to work, and also for males to take more responsibility at home. And that was the origin. But to enable that, we had to have all the tech to work flexibly, and that had to be universal. So everyone had the choice. So we've been enjoying this for many years, and we've had a level of trust and choice, and so we've benefited from that greatly, I think, in terms of productivity and employee engagement. And I think that will definitely increase in the coming years. And one thing that I've said to my guys time and again is that what we've got to do now is change our mindset and stop thinking about, you know, work being where we are. This is about what you do where you are. And so I used to plan for what I would do working from home. I'd think, okay, Friday's my admin day, I'm going to tick this off and that off. Now I'm going to be planning for the key cultural and social events and meetings, customer interactions I need to have when I'm in the office. And I think that'll lead to many more richer, you know, better planned, better structured, and interesting face-to-face meetings each and every time we have them, because we're just there. We need to make the most of all of our face-to-face interactions.
Yeah, and I think that we get really good at working out where face-to-face is really good, and you know, that's that area of collaboration where we're looking at physiology, where we're shooting the breeze. I think that's the one that I struggled with Teams, Zoom, and WebEx, which I've loved. But the areas where you're strategizing new ideas, where you're looking at white space, where you're trying to create value, that I find is a great collaborative thing to do. And coming together for that specifically will be so much more valuable. But there was a truckload of other stuff you didn't need to have that face-to-face.
Yeah, and that's something I found really difficult, actually, from a leadership perspective. I mean, you mentioned empathy before. I think that's just been a given. We've really had to double down on helping everyone to feel included. to bring to life the communications and really plan them very, very well, to deliver a level of sensitivity and empathy in every video or every meeting that we've had. And I think that's been widely acknowledged by our group. But then, as we move into a more of a remote working lifestyle, I think as leaders and throughout the rest of the business, really, we need to learn new skills in how to conduct and facilitate meetings, using new tool sets, for example, so that we can continue that level of productivity. But what I don't think we will ever be able to substitute is getting a group of energetic people around a table with a couple of whiteboards and just thrashing things out.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting back to that, I have to say.
Yeah, I've been lucky to do a couple of them. And I got to tell you, it's been amazingly refreshing. I've expressed such gratitude to the clients that have gone back or allowed me to come in and get a few flip charts up and start walking around a room again. And it's been really exciting. There was a piece of research that came out, local research in Australia. It was interesting. And they talk about the corporate life. They were saying generally people are still feeling connected to their work colleagues, but they miss them. And I thought that was a really subtle, really nice thing to say. Like, we're connected, we've got the systems, we're seeing each other on Zoom, Teams, WebEx, whatever you're running, but we miss them. And I think that's that miss them bit, was that last bit you were talking about, which is when we do get together and we do those things together, there is a magic. And someone, a leader today said to me, he said, it's what he's missing is the banter in the office. And so if you're in that room or you're in that open plan, you're focused on your thing, but there's other conversations going on that you hear, and someone might come to you and go, "Hey, Matt, what are your thoughts on this?" And you go, "Well, here's my thought, but you know what? I think Jenny was talking about that with Sally. Do you want to?" We don't do that when we're in like this.
Oh, I really, the water cooler moments, I think, so valuable. I'll always value those. Definitely changed my mind on that, because I think that that's coming back to planning every single meeting and everything that you need to share. You just lose some of those nuances of being in the office. And I think just being together physically is just natural instinct as well. So it would really take some getting used to it. And so I don't think we'll ever substitute coming back to offices. It's just rather, what will those workspaces be, and what will they be there for?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. Did you, and you talked about Telstra being agile and being a tech company for a long time. It was, really, really well advanced in this area. Were there any industries sort of outside of maybe tech or IT&T that surprised you as being fairly well advanced down the agile path or the digital transformation path?
No, actually, we saw just really consistent results in that nearly every marketplace or every vertical marketplace were grappling with the same challenges, and all looking at digital transformation, and typically the results were more than 80% were moving towards their digital goals. Perhaps a couple of things we spotted were that overall financial services invested the most, and post-pandemic mining, oil and gas, manufacturing were the verticals that had plowed the most extra funding into digital transformation. Otherwise, it was actually pretty vanilla. It's like everyone's grappling with this.
Yes. Yeah. Well, do you have a feel for what EMEA is versus APAC or the US? Was there any feel for it was more advanced or less advanced?
Yep. So we've done a similar study in APAC, and it seems that companies there are moving faster. So we looked at a similar number of verticals, similar number of people, and so yes, we would say that there is some level of advancement in Asia Pacific.
Yeah. And what about some of the digital transformations? I mean, there was a lot of things that can happen. Internet of Things, 5G, e-business, blockchain, data, AI, and of course the big one, security. Were there any of those that were more popular than others, or was it dependent on the industry or the stage they were at?
Yeah, that was interesting too, because we're moving towards the value creation part of digital transformation now, and I think we spend a lot of time talking about operating efficiency, but 97% of the respondents said they're investigating new technology. But there were 4 key areas which had more than a third for every single in every tech said, look, we're investing this. And they were artificial intelligence, 5G, IoT, and edge compute. And I thought that was pretty stark because it all indicates further infrastructure investment. It feels like it's all about data. So collecting data from things, transporting it to the edge, processing it at the edge, and analyzing it. And so, yeah, I think that those technologies will be prevalent in the next 3 to 5 years. And the platforms that are installed today, the cloud foundation, the software-defined networks, should consider the adoption of new tech as well, and interoperating with new tech, I would say, for future value creation. And I would say those technologies are going to be the ones that are next adopted at scale.
When you talk about the, can you take us through a little more about the edge? What you mean by the data at the edge? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so imagine you have fleets of driverless cars, all generating massive amounts of data in our streets, and that has to be collected and it has to be sent back to base stations, which might exist on typical infrastructure of today, let's say a lamppost or a bus stop. And so that data has to be processed, so it'll go back to regional hubs, and really that's what edge compute is. It's about extending processing power into our communities. And that's where data can be analyzed and then acted upon. And so as we move into this kind of future world where technology is running things for us, that will be something that we'll see on our streets and in our cities. And edge computing is a fundamental part of that.
And so during the research with edge computing and through EMEA, did you get any sense of whether any where some countries, some governments were more advanced and more open in this space? Because clearly they're going to be a large part of edge computing would have to be government infrastructure and their role.
That's a good one. We actually didn't research that. So yeah, I'll have to come back to you on that one, I think. But I would guess that yes, within the UK, the government would be running tenders for infrastructure investment using their facilities and assets, I would say. Yeah. And there's a huge amount of investment in private equity as well in infrastructure right now, with an eye on that into the future, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think that's similarly to out here, but as I'm thinking, it may not even be in the research, but it's just one of those things that really, if the governments really need to be, they need to be proactive. They need to be up with the technology and this language because there's so much needs to happen, and they can be such catalysts for it happening quicker, or they can be a major problem with it not happening as well.
Absolutely.
And if you've got when you're talking about funding and venture capital involved, well, they have choices to make, and which country they invest in. They don't have to invest where they're based. They'll be looking around. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. Security was a big one as well that came through, which I think is a good thing. And that was one of the ones I noticed certainly locally in here, that there are now a number of financial services institutions that just they made a lot of assumptions. I think that their people could go remote and work remotely easily because they were doing it 1 day a week. But when they went, hang on a second, you're going 5 days a week. And by the way, there's a number of investment analysts we have who actually live in share houses. And is it appropriate to be doing wealth management with 3 of your flatmates? I'm being crude, but I'm actually being real as well. That they a number of them said to me, God, we just thought we could go switch it on overnight. In fact, it took us 3 months to kind of get the security right. Did you come across that at all? That sort of was actually took them longer, and their assumptions were had to be kind of reevaluated. Well,
that's a really good example. That's a real example. And what remote working means is that our perimeters are far wider and much more dispersed, and there are many more loopholes and devices that can become a threat from a cybersecurity perspective. And over 2/3 of the respondents reported in the survey that the number of cyber attacks experienced by their organization had increased as a result of the pandemic. But then the types of attacks as well were also changing and more varied. So, for example, the things which prey on our lack of knowledge or vulnerability, such as phishing attacks, were really on the rise. And so just more kind of more unscrupulous people looking for more ingenious ways to trick unsuspecting users into allowing access into corporate systems. And so I think from our perspective, we've historically seen that security is thought of as protecting your perimeter, and is technology based. It's about firewalls, but actually it's not. It's about a life cycle of constant evaluation, constant reviewing of your policies, protection of your edge, but also then training and making your people aware as to what's happening in the world. And so we think that skills in security are absolutely fundamental in enterprise organizations.
You made a point, I think, in the report saying that one of the things we have to do is protect the organization from its people. And because the perimeter, I think that's what you're getting at, the perimeter now is just, it's so large, isn't it? And so are you seeing organizations respond to that in terms of training their people in security protocols? Is that on the rise?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the most successful part of the business I run in terms of professional services is all about security. And it's, as I said, it's about looking at the complete gamut of considerations. And we also have a really big community of security professionals called Club CISO. And that's a fantastic source of information and experiences as well. And so we hear that from that group too, is that working with people is as important as working with the technology. Yeah,
I'm really excited about that rise and that connection. I did some work with Checkpoint back in 2019, and one of the things we discovered was there was this, I think it was on average 3 layers between the CEO and the security chief. At best. And they had this great, one of the pieces of stat they came out with was that they asked about a certain amount of organizations, and then 50% of them, the CEO said, no, we're completely fine. In the same organization, the heads of security said, no, we've been hacked 3 times. And it was, it was the same organizations. And one was, yep, it's all good, right, to no, we're under the pump. And it was like, well, actually, how does the security reporting get to the CEO? And it was a vast, too high a percentage was, when I touch base with them every so often informally, i.e. we're around the water cooler, how are we going? Are we okay? Yeah, we're going well, fantastic. Whereas now it's been raised to, this is actually compliance, this is regulation, this is something we need to actually put into a process. And what's been exciting about that, I think, has been the rise of technology to have a seat at the boardroom table, whether it's security or it's adoption of digital transformation or it's about value creation. I think that's what I'm starting to see. You seeing something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So technology and cybersecurity as a discrete topic actually are both board level considerations. And some of the stats from the report said that just under 60% said that improving cybersecurity is a top priority as we recover from the pandemic at board level.
Yeah.
So it's just something that cannot be ignored.
Yeah, and something for board members as well to think about, those who are on boards and non-advisory boards, formal boards. They need to be skilled up now, don't they, in technology, but also security, and be able to ask great questions. They don't need to have the answers, but they need to be able to feel confident in the questioning.
Indeed, and you have to have a fundamental level of awareness to do that. But absolutely right.
Tell me about you now. What are some of your favorite apps you're using these days for remote working and remote leading? Well, anything that's come out over the last 6-7 months that you've enjoyed working with, where you got better at?
Good question. I mean, the technology is what it is. We use Microsoft Teams. We use Zoom periodically. I've seen some interesting uses of collaboration technology to run virtual events as well, which was pretty cool. But I think the tools are what they are. It's more about how you lead remotely. What are the new considerations you need to make? And for me, that's been very much about the human side of leadership.
Yes.
Understanding, putting myself in the shoes of the people that I work with, what they need, helping them to feel connected. Also from my own perspective, and I actually don't do this very well, but in talking to other leaders, what's been really prevalent is that we need to take time out for ourselves as well, and recharge and make sure that we're on top form, because I think everyone has experienced that working hours have extended as well, and there's a huge amount of pressure, making decisions quickly, and bearing the weight of having to respond and react really quickly to quite a stark situation, but also keep the lights on, run the business, and drive future values. It's a big task. So you need time out to think.
Yes. Yeah.
And innovate as well. So yeah, it's been less about tool sets, I would say, and more about thinking about the fundamentals of leadership.
I think that's right. And I think that's the way to approach it. I think the approach leadership first, but be technology enabled. An example of that, I had one leader who, he's a task orientated driver. Okay. So he's not your first person to grab a coffee with, but he used apps to remind him to check in with his team. So he used alerts to prompt him to check in. Has he checked in with these specific people who were like that and were more vulnerable, just as their personality, and they loved the office and weren't as comfortable working behind. So he was leading, but using the tech to kind of enable that to make sure he was checking in. Another one that's made a really good point said to me that he made probably a decision to say, I'm going to call people who are 2 to 3 layers below my direct reports, because I want to really check in. And what he found was, when he first rang these people, they were like, and he asked them how they were. They were like, yeah, good, great. Yeah, awesome, fantastic. And he knew he had enough emotional intelligence to go, they're just answering me because I am who I am.
So what have I done?
Yeah, so he had to, but he realized that they weren't going to change. He would have to change. And I really admired this one, because he worked out, he just sort of sat around and thought, what can I do? And so he would leave it, but he'd call back the next week. And he was different the way he said, hi, it's so-and-so here. Hey, I'm just checking in. How's it feel to be you today? And it was just nice. Different. It was a really, how's it feel to you to be today? And then silence, right? And he said, it just opened up. And he said he's now got such a better relationship with people, 2 to 3 layers below and across the board. But it was just that extra bit. You talked about empathy, and just sometimes we need to change, kind of be in their shoes. If they're getting a call from someone, like yourself, and they may be 2 or 3 layers below, the reaction is going to be, it's great, it's fantastic. I still got my job, because it's just nervousness. But if you come in with a different way and a different approach, it really changed things up. He said for him, and he felt better. He felt I actually really connected with them, and I could genuinely say they were okay, as opposed to just responding to me.
Yeah, that's a nice story, actually. Really lovely story. And I think it's you just got to be really consistent and consistently approachable, and you've got to keep working at that. You can't really expect everyone to just say, okay, he's really approachable. One day you just got to keep demonstrating that that's the case, and reach out to people and connect.
Well, I had one leader, it went the opposite. They decided to do a Friday afternoon check-in, right? I thought that was the best thing. I said, let's have a kind of Friday afternoon drinks virtual check-in. Well, apparently they thought that was a great idea, and people jumped on board, and it turned out to be the most stressful thing that he could have done. What he found out was people were like homeschooling. They were, it was, 5 days turned into 7 days. They thought, well, do I have to dress up for this? Do I have to wear a suit? Do they want all the cameras on? I have to have the kids done by this time. We can't have this where oh no, my wife's using the home office this time. It's her turn. I'm on the dining room table. What if I don't check in? Is it going to be said I'm not participating? I'm slacking off. And so thankfully, I had an organization, we provided him enough feedback to say, you know what, this Friday afternoon thing, he says, yeah, how's it working? I said, it's not working really well at all. Can you come in and just say that if you want to join, you can. If you don't want to join, the other things on, it's perfectly okay. But if you want to be there, we're going to be there. Now, once they did that, it just changed the game. It completely changed it up. People felt relaxed. But the first few weeks of him doing it, it was all this. People were just so more stressed, and so you try and do the right thing sometimes. it backs off, and I think that's just part of the learning, isn't it? As we go more remote, we're learning it as we go.
Definitely, and for us, I think it's about providing a number of different ways to interact. And we've been working with our healthcare partners and wellbeing partners to provide different levels of interaction. So, for example, we've had like yoga sessions, and we've had just team timeouts for a cup of tea, and we've also had other things like guest speakers come in from other organizations who've shared their perspectives. So you just don't think just within your own company. It's about looking at other companies and what they're going through too, but all sorts of other things as well, like sessions for children, to take a little bit of pressure off the parents. And
right.
I think those partners have been fantastic, really, in just facilitating all of that. But we've also done is mix up the social parts. So I think what's awkward about social events online is that it's all of you sat around a metaphorical round table,
Yes.
and it's not easy to speak or have side conversations. One of you talks at a time. The technology doesn't allow for that. It's often fairly staged and quite awkward. But what we found the most successful with that is like a bit of gamification. So we've been running like quiz shows.
Yes.
So we've stolen a format from a British quiz show, and we've had teams of 4. We run one episode every week. We get an audience. We have different quiz masters from around the business. And it just gets everybody involved, and we're going through it now. We've had about 16 teams. We're heading through to our final. Prize. That's been great.
That's
we're
great.
going to carry that on in person.
I know. I love the way you've done that consistently too. That's been it's great because they build a bit of momentum, don't they? I found that the big ones kind of work, but they're much better when you break them into groups. And so if you get a good facilitator, you break them into put them in groups, random groups. I found that, and then mix them up and come around and rotate and give a bit of feedback on how all the groups went. That's when you get some real traction, because you can just about have those sort of water cooler sidebar kind of conversations if you're in the smaller groups. But it's you've got to be intentional, though, don't you? It doesn't just happen.
Absolutely, it takes a bit of planning, but it's been worth it because there's so many different roles and accountabilities, and there's real competition, and because it's teams of 4, I mean, everyone's like kind of practicing and planning together how they're going to deal with the task at hand, and so it's been actually really rewarding for everyone.
Yeah, that's a great example, Matt. I'm really impressed by that, and I think we're going to do more of that. I think I think what I've been amazed on the tech side is just how much Zoom and Teams and WebEx and the other providers have really lifted. I mean, those guys would have been so under the pump and still are, no doubt, with seeing what they can do and things they can bring out. And I've just been amazed at the amount of change that's been happening, and we've all been learning as we go along. I've done a couple of sessions where WebEx Cisco's decided to change the menu. They don't give you an advance warning in an email. You just go log on and go, hang on, it's gone over there somewhere. But that's it. I mean, but you live with the pace of change that they're experimenting themselves, and I think we've all got so much better. I've certainly found people have got generally, if I look back to March 2020 to now, the ability of everyone is just lifted. The bar is so much higher in terms of being able to use virtual meetings, being comfortable with virtual meetings, buying virtually, pitching virtually. That's the McKinsey's research last year was amazing about people back in April who were like, well, we're not so sure. We still want to go face to face till August. It was like, no, this is really working, and now in April this year, we're now like, no, we're definitely signing off, 1 mil plus. We're happy to do that via this kind of format. Well, it just wasn't the case last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the next chapter, really, is how do we really get used to leading, facilitating, and driving business using tool sets and, as you said, rapidly evolving tool sets to drive our businesses.
Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge, but it's a good one. It's a good challenge to have. I'm looking forward to building my skills in that area. And you asked a question before about what tool sets I've been using. There's another one called Mural, actually, which I felt has been really good. It's like virtual sticky notes and whiteboards, and you can go into groups and kind of build little focus groups and give feedback. It's been actually really good, as long as you structure the session well and get the instructions right, be really prescriptive, get everyone to focus on very specific questions. I think it really works.
Yeah, well, good. That's a great tip. That's Mural. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Well, Matt, thanks for your time today. Is the report, are you going to do the report again this time next year? Is that the plan?
We'll no doubt we will do some more research. I would imagine it'll have a different topic. But yes, we will certainly be reaching out to the market to see what's happening.
Yeah. I just think it'd be a great one to do again, wouldn't it? Because you've got such great research now. Just to touch on a few things. Obviously, it'll have a different flavour and maybe a different angle to it. But I think just seeing the progress, because as you said, we've still, so many organisations are still, the hybrid, they're going back and not going back. But also, this pandemic is not over. You and I were talking earlier about the situation in India, which is not great at this point. So I don't think we're globally out of the woods just yet. So
absolutely. I mean, yeah, exactly. I think it's a good idea. It would be foolish to really feel that we're moving out of this completely. I think it's going to be an indefinite issue, and so we have to continue to adapt. So why not? Let's continue to test how enterprises are responding to this.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it, Matt. And look, so great to thank you for your time today, and really appreciate catching up and having a chat.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite, Rob. It's been great to catch up with you, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of the It's All Possible podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast you listen to so we can continue to serve you and inspire others. Remember, connect to us on all the social media channels. The It's All Possible podcast is hosted by me, Rob Hartnett, and produced by the phenomena that is Finn Hartnett. Connect with us via LinkedIn, Instagram, or the link tree in the show notes.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.